A bit shaky there. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to what's on the playlist today. Yeah, if I can talk. Today I'll talk about the Eagles live album. Um, this album was released in 1980. Of the 15 tracks, five of them were recorded during over 3 nights show, during tour 1976, meaning 10 songs were recorded at a different trio of shows in the 1980s. This created some challenges because the band had different lineups in those years. At the time this album was released, the band was on the verge of breaking up. Backstage at one of the concerts during the Long Run tour in 1979, apparently Don Henley and Glenn Frey almost came to blows because of an argument, to such that Glenn Frey refused to work with them anymore. Including during the making of the assembling of this album. It had to be mixed and dubbed and stuff like that. Glenn Frey was in Los Angeles, and Don Henley and the rest of the band were in Miami, and they would basically FedEx tapes back and forth to fix them and get them mixed and stuff. One of the producers was like, "This band was mixed thanks to FedEx." Rolling Stone said this was at the time one of the most heavily overdubbed albums of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine. Pretty much the only reason they made this album is that they were contractually obligated to make another album with Elektra and Asylum Records. Yeah, they had one more album making a contract, so they just kind of threw this together to try and get it over and done with, because they were breaking up. The album itself contains at least a sampling of songs from 5 of their 6 albums, along with 2 songs by Joe Walsh, who had joined the band in the 80s or late 70s, and 1 cover song, the heavily acoustic harmony song, or at least their version of it, Seven Bridges Road. I don't know, I've never heard the original song, so the only version that I know is the Eagles version. This album actually did fairly well. It peaked in the U.S. charts at number 6 on U.S. Billboard. I think it was like 8 or 9 in the U.K. Australia peaked at number 3. I mentioned Seven Bridges Roads, which was released as a single from the album, and it actually became a top 40 hit for the Eagles, along with all their original music. So there's like a lot of little neat, interesting little tidbits, but I didn't know about, before trying to do this review. For me, this album, I was still living at home, working summer jobs and stuff when this album came out. So, I listened to my parents' copy. This is mine, obviously, but that's how kind of I got introduced to it, because while I may have had money working summer jobs, the town that I lived in didn't have a record store. So being able to purchase albums of my own was a rare occurrence, just from lack of availability. And, the internet didn't exist. I couldn't just order albums, go online and order records if I wanted to. I had to actually find a store to buy them at. I didn't have a car to drive. So my record collection as a teenager was a mix of the stuff I managed to get for myself and a mixture of what my parents had. And I loved this album when it came out, especially Seven Bridges Road. As someone who has a history of as a singer, not professionally, but singing was my thing. Anything with good vocal harmony was something that I tended to gravitate towards. So that was my favorite song on this album. The rest of the songs, like I said, are a collection of popular songs from a majority of their album catalog. Hold Out California, Heartache Tonight, Can't Tell You Why, Long Run, New Kid in Town, Life's Been Good, Seven Bridge Road, Wasted Time, Take It to the Limit, Duel and Dalton, Desperado, Saturday Night, All Night Long, Life in the Fast Lane, and Take It Easy are the tracks from this album. Like I said, of those 15, 13 of them are original songs. One's a cover, 2's Joe Walsh. Which one is this Joe Walsh? Life's Been Good, I know it's Joe Walsh on. I don't know the other one. But yeah, Life's Been Good is definitely one of Joe Walsh's hits from his solo career before he joined the Eagles. The album itself is pretty tight. I know there's a lot of difference between a live performance and a studio performance. You know, a live performance is a lot more raw. You know, you can't edit out mistakes, things like that. There's a different energy involved. And it's really, from my own experience going to concerts and things, it's really hard for a band to capture the same sound that they get in a studio recording and still give it the same energy as a live performance. Now, some performers do better live. They really do. They're meant to be a live band. And some bands do better as a studio because they don't have the stage presence for it. You know, and I've seen both. But the best live bands are the ones that can take that studio performance live and make it just as tight and fill it with the energy of a live performance. And this definitely does that. You know, it sounds, you know, like 80-90% of like what their studio recordings sound like for these songs, and it just punches it up a notch. You know, for me, this is one of the better live albums in my collection. You know, I tend not to buy a lot of live albums because if I already have all the records, and live albums is just a repeat of the same songs. I tend to only buy them when there's something unique there, because I don't, you know, it's got to be something special for me to buy the live album. This is actually the only Eagles album that I own for some reason. I never actually bought the other stuff. Don't know why, but part of that was that, you know, all the best songs, or most of the best songs, are already on here. I already have, you know, a ton of music. Adding more to it at a certain stage becomes redundant because there's not enough hours in a day to listen to it all. And I have hit that point. But yeah, this is surprisingly tight for a live performance, you know. And yeah, they do manage to pump up the energy and make it as solid and better than the studio performance. And for me, that's probably one of the reasons I've never bought any of the other Eagles albums, is because I like these performances better than the studio versions. So buying the studio version would just be to get the songs that are on the albums that aren't on here. And there's only a handful of those that I really feel that I would want to have. I may get around to it one of these days, depending on, you know, finances and time and willingness to download more stuff to my computer and then upload it onto a device to travel with. But yeah, this is, and it reached number 6. This is one of the better albums to come out of 1980. And it is a solid performance by the Eagles. Don't know what else I can tell you beside that. I'm not going to bother rating it because it's a good album. Don't need to rate it. I've already given my recommendations. You know, if you're my age, you know the music already. If you're younger than me and you're watching this, give it a listen. You know, there's already a ton of music out there. Take a chance. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.